NVIDIA's cloud subscription gaming service GeForce Now, where you get to pay monthly forever to use a video card on the internet that you could have bought instead, but now it gets to live in a data center that sucks power and raises your power bill in addition to costing money every month, recently had a partner hacked. And NVIDIA says this is an isolated event to just one of its distribution, basically, partners for the cloud gaming service. But this stands as a canary in a coal mine, we think, for why subscription services introduce additional unnecessary risk. In early May, hacker group ShinyHunters, or at least someone posing as them, claimed to have stolen user data from GeForce Now. The group said the data came from the GeForce Now databases and contained names, email addresses, usernames, dates of birth, membership statuses, two-factor authentication information, and more. GeForce Now has at least 30 million members. If the group's claims were strictly true, the security breach could have compromised private information from millions of gamers and would have been one of the largest in recent years. In this instance, the GeForce Now hack appears to be more localized than the initial claim led on. NVIDIA confirmed the security breach after a few days and said the incident didn't impact NVIDIA's own GeForce services. Instead, it pointed the finger at a regional partner. We have no way to verify the truth of NVIDIA's own statements. One important thing here is that the user is named ShinyHunters, and so is kind of posing as the famous hacker group. However, from what we understand, at least per some additional reporting, ShinyHunters has itself denied that user being part of them. So basically saying it's an imposter. We don't know which is right or wrong. The imposter thing seems likely that's happened in the past. Broadly speaking, we're going to use the name ShinyHunters throughout this because that is the user's username, but just be aware that it's them claiming to be ShinyHunters and there may be some debate over whether they actually are. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter too much who the attacker was for what NVIDIA said, which is that their partner was in fact breached. The risks remain though, regardless of how big or small this particular breach is, and the criticisms for GeForce Now are the same as they always have been, but maybe now reinforced because there's also, it turns out, third parties involved. So although NVIDIA gets to point the finger at someone else, the security is really only as secure as the weakest link. And if they're inviting additional partners in to propagate this cloud-based gaming service that honestly really shouldn't exist to begin with for other reasons, then that weakens the entire structure. And as more people move to entertainment on cloud services or uploading all of your stuff to a drive service rather than storing it locally on a NAS or your computer, the profitability of breaches will increase. And so they're going to keep happening. Discord not long ago had a breach where people's driver's licenses were bought and sold on the internet, as far as we understand, as a result of that breach. Millions of people use cloud services for entertainment and gaming, and the entire service is, again, only as secure as its weakest link. So let's go through the GeForce Now hack. We brought you this video with our gold Halo VRAM drinkware and copper-plated mule mugs on store.GamersNexus.net because, let's face it, times are tough in the PC DIY space, and at least you can get VRAM on a glass. We recently restocked our copper-plated stainless steel mule mugs with a hammered surface. Hammered, much like Jensen Huang must have been when he said there was no smuggling. They even have thermal conductivity lasered into them in text. We also recently restocked our gold Halo VRAM glasses on the store. These were in super high demand after our black market GPU campaign previously, and due to how much work the gold rim takes to get to our standards, it took until now to finally get them fully restocked. The glasses have a thick gold halo rim and a pattern of VRAM and GPU on the glass itself, designed by Andrew in Blender, actually in 3D. These even have AI, by which I mean, hey, I'm gonna need a drink because of the RAM prices. Head over to store.GamersNexus.net to support this content directly. Back to it. This started on May 2nd when a bunch of reports popped up online about a GeForce Now database breach. Dark web intelligence shared a breach forums post from a user going by ShinyHunters on Twitter. ShinyHunters claimed to have stolen data from NVIDIA GeForce Now in a post titled "Sell GeForce Now Full Database Leak, Names, Emails, DOB, Nicknames, TOTP, and Roles." End quote. The alleged cyber thief said, quote, "NVIDIA's GeForce Now just got owned by ShinyHunters. I pulled their entire user database from the back end. Millions of real user records," end quote. ShinyHunters said the GeForce Now user data included first and last names, email addresses, usernames, dates of birth, membership status, two-factor authentication status, access flags, account creation dates, and more. Amusingly, some of the initial Twitter responses called the breach fake, but were quickly proven to be wrong. NVIDIA didn't have official information immediately available, presumably while the company's security teams investigated the incident. ShinyHunters, though, was trying to sell what it claimed was the GeForce Now data on breach forums. Part of the dark web, the U.S. Department of Justice said breach forums is known for purchasing, trading, and selling stolen data, as opposed to, all the big corporations buying, trading, and selling your data, which is fine, I guess. The U.S. government even arrested and resentenced the original creator and operator of breach forums. The dark web is home to nefarious actors like ShinyHunters. The cybersecurity guru said ShinyHunters built its, quote, reputation on massive breaches, end quote, and the group's playbook is to either, quote, auction the data to the highest bidder or use it as leverage, end quote. ShinyHunters wouldn't sell the purported GeForce Now data for cheap. Security outlet Cyber News reported ShinyHunters put a price tag of $100,000 on the data. ShinyHunters requested the payment in cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin or Monero, or if you prefer, Monero. I've always been more of a Monero pronunciation person myself. However, with anything on the dark web, the truth here was murky, and users were quick to call the whole thing fake. Cyber News questioned the credibility of the hacker's claims. Cyber News said the threat actor used the ShinyHunters handle, but the group ShinyHunters had not posted, quote, any related information on its leak site, which is a central repository for the gang's major breach disclosures and extortion demands, end quote. The outlet noted the, quote, broader instability of the cybercrime ecosystem adds to the difficulty of verifying any threat actor's claims, end quote. A few days later, though, NVIDIA verified the threat actor's claims, sort of, with one big caveat. On May 5th, NVIDIA provided an update to its investigation to video cards, but didn't name the culprit. NVIDIA's official mouthpiece said, quote, our investigation found no impact to NVIDIA-operated services. The issue is limited to systems run by a third-party GeForce Now Alliance partner based in Armenia. We are working closely with the partner to support their investigation and resolution. Impacted users will be notified by GFN.AM, end quote. NVIDIA's GeForce Now Alliance partner, GFN.AM, corroborated the breach in a punctual blog. Quote, we are aware of the security breach to GFN.AM and took the necessary steps to contain it. We make every effort to protect data and take all claims seriously. Impacted users will be notified directly within the next 24 hours, end quote. GeForce Now Alliance partners like GFN.AM extend NVIDIA's cloud gaming services to more regions with what they claim are, quote, better ping times and improved latency, end quote, according to one NVIDIA support article. In this case, GFN.AM runs the GeForce Now service in Armenia and other nearby countries, including Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. GFN.AM followed up with a second blog a day later. The company provided more detail on the security breach and stolen data, but it doesn't name Armenia or any specific country. GFN.AM said the breach happened on March 9th, 2026, nearly 2 months before it was publicly known and identified on May 2nd. The company said, quote, account passwords were not compromised. However, there is a possibility that third parties may have gained access to certain personal data, end quote. That's always the best kind of data for them to gain access to. Certain and kinds of, data that you know what it is and it's hyper-specific so you can control it, protect it. GFN.AM did at least say the compromised information, other than being certain, may include email addresses, phone numbers, dates of birth, first and last names, and user nicknames. The NVIDIA partner didn't mention anything about two-factor authentication information or access flags, which were contained in the ShinyHunters post. In an attempt to soothe its customers, GFN.AM said it, quote, took measures to eliminate the causes of unauthorized access and implemented additional organizational and technical measures aimed at enhancing the security of our information systems and preventing similar situations in the future, end quote. GFN.AM did not elaborate on how it enhanced its security, although that's somewhat standard to not reveal it. It didn't identify how many people had been affected, which would be standard, and it didn't say what customers should do, which would also be standard. As for the information they did confirm to breach, all of that is valuable. Phone numbers and dates of birth are valuable. They're useful. And in particular, as ID verification becomes more important, this type of data, I think a lot of people aren't connecting these dots yet from what I've seen. And when I say people, I mean like politicians and corporations. But this type of data is very useful for bot farms, where if you want to create valid-looking users to pass what's becoming AI user verification systems to try and prevent bot users, then this kind of information is excellent for that, especially if you can start linking known information together. Maybe you find parts of an ID somewhere, you find parts of a credit card in some place, you find other parts somewhere else, the date of birth somewhere, you can get the social security number, maybe from the Equifax breach or something. There's plenty of options out there to start connecting this data. And as much as we meme on it, and I think most people in our audience, including me, really dislike AI and its at least current state, if not just in general, as much as it is memed on and mocked, and it deserves that, it makes it much easier to start connecting this type of data for breaches where you have just millions upon millions of records and they're all from different breaches. You could see how combining, okay, we've got a birth date for this username here, we have the last four of the credit card over there, we have the actual name of the user from this database, and then we've got maybe a social security number or part of it from that database. This stuff can start to be kind of combined or reconstructed into actual people if you have sufficient breaches and a tool to crawl through all of them and just kind of do deterministic or whatever matchmaking of that information, which is actually not too hard to do these days. So you could also just program it. But the point is, all of this is more valuable than the companies like to let on whenever a breach happens. And you can cycle through completed profiles to reconstruct them. So this isn't the first time, though, that hackers have targeted and stolen information from a gaming cloud service provider. In October 2023, PC Mag reported the cloud gaming and virtual PC provider Shadow suffered a data breach that exposed sensitive customer information, including names, email addresses, dates of birth, billing addresses, and credit card expiration dates. Shadow alerted customers about the breach with an email from its CEO, where Shadow described how they were breached. According to the company, they were a, quote, victim of a social engineering attack, end quote, that targeted one of their employees. Social engineering really isn't that sophisticated, but they'd sure like you to think it is. Quote, this highly sophisticated attack began on the Discord platform with the downloading of malware under cover of a game on the Steam platform, proposed by an acquaintance of our employee, himself a victim of the same attack. Our security team took immediate action. Despite our actions, the attacker was able to exploit one of the stolen cookies to connect to the management interface of one of our SaaS providers. Thanks to this cookie, now deactivated, the attacker was able to extract via our SaaS provider's API certain private information about you, end quote. Seemingly between binges, even the FBI got involved in the case of Steam games. Steam has had multiple issues with games containing or being breached by malware over the last few years, leading to compromised users just from downloading updates in some instances, or games in their entirety which were malware. The Register confirmed the email's authenticity with a Shadow representative, but the company didn't have much else to share. The Register reported the hacker, who claims to have stolen the customer information, listed the data for sale on a what they call cybercrime forum. The listing claimed to have the details of 533,624 of Shadow's customers. In this case, if NVIDIA is to be believed, then the breach would appear to be highly localized and contains to one country, Armenia, which itself has about 3 million people from a quick population lookup. The security breach would have been worse, of course, if NVIDIA's actual servers for their entirety were affected, which is what the user claiming to be ShinyHunters claimed. But that's not what NVIDIA's confirmed. I don't know. We have no way to verify what either one of them is saying. In the very least, definitely the Armenia service was breached. So that much is known. And according to a document on NVIDIA's website, the GeForce Now user base is around 30 million members in 110 countries. We don't know how many of those are going through third-party propagators like GFN.AM. The GeForce Now breach, though, highlights again the risk of cloud gaming, among other services, and using cloud-based streaming solutions, especially if you're passing basically a computer through it. Like if you're subscribing to a computer and doing stuff beyond gaming on that, or logging into accounts like Steam or Epic Games or whatever to play your games on the cloud-based service, all of that stuff could be at risk, could be intercepted if it's not secured properly. And so this is important stuff to be aware of beyond just the latency problems for cloud gaming. And any information that people use for cloud services, like chat logs, discussion with friends, that's all potentially valuable information, banking information. It's all subject to be bought, traded, and sold if it's intercepted and and breached. Like with anywhere else, you put that information if it's not secured properly. As more services move to cloud solutions, though, we think cybercrime will continue to grow because it's profitable. It's becoming more profitable. Privacy and user data associated with cloud-based accounts are constantly at risk of being stolen. In the FBI's 2024 Internet Crime Report, which it published in April of 2025, the agency's Internet Crime Complaint Center, known as IC3, said the top 3 most reported cybercrimes were phishing or spoofing, extortion, and personal data breaches. But they also said it can be worse. The FBI's IC3 said losses attributed to cybercrime amounted to more than $16 billion in 2024 in total. The agency said cybercrime had caused $50.5 billion in losses in the last 5 years, with the annual losses increasing every year since 2020. But maybe additionally interesting is the US's propensity to make friends on the global stage, where as nations engage in adversarial actions against each other, there's profit to be had from attacking not just infrastructure, but even the people of other countries to extract money from them in instances, especially where a different nation might be embargoed or restricted somehow for trade. So in other words, state-backed hackers are at play too. North Korea's RGB, not to be confused with gaming's RGB. And to be fair, gaming's RGB is a much more successful malware distributor than North Korea's RGB, but they got to work up to it. Anyway, it's attributed with ransomware attacks on hospitals and healthcare providers. The Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency has also accused Iranian attackers with logic controller hacks for infrastructure. Additionally, for many data breaches, only the companies themselves or the hackers actually know the truth and the full extent of it, and both of them are they have something to gain by manipulating the truth at least a little bit. In this situation, NVIDIA's and GFN.AM statements don't fully reveal the scope of the breach or explain how much information the attackers may have gotten access to and actually stolen. We just know that it happened at some extent, some level. NVIDIA put the blame on its partner, GFN.AM, and GFN.AM said it would follow up with users directly. However, GFN.AM didn't mention Armenia in its blogs, and that's despite NVIDIA specifically calling out that specific region or country. We don't know why GFN.AM didn't assure customers in other countries that they serve that their data wasn't compromised. It doesn't look good, but NVIDIA named a specific spot. So we think NVIDIA and GFN.AM want to downplay the security risks of cloud-based gaming and just move on. We've talked before about GeForce Now strategy. NVIDIA has kind of let the bottom end of the GPU market just evaporate, and now that's served by monthly subscriptions instead through GeForce Now. Selling a GPU to a gamer is a one-time transaction. Renting it to them, actually renting it to potentially millions of them for eternity until that device is no longer useful, that has value forever. That's great for cash flow, which is why they're kind of all going this way. And selling a cloud gaming subscription monetizes a GPU for years to come beyond the one-time transaction as gamers continue using that GPU over and over. So NVIDIA keeps its GPUs and its profits by renting them. The cloud gaming business model is growing. Grand View research firm estimated the cloud gaming market will reach $21 billion by 2030, thanks to GeForce Now, Xbox Cloud Gaming, PlayStation Plus Premium, and other service providers. Cloud gaming won't be going away easily or maybe at all. We live in a world where the tech industry wants consumers to own nothing. And I really do think we need to underscore again AI and all this, where as much as we mercilessly mock AI for all the stupid bullshit it does, and then inaccuracies it has, and the dumb statements it makes, it is a useful tool for this type of thing. Like collating, combining, collecting, matching, cross-referencing databases, that is something that is not particularly easy to do. You could build code for it. You could build an actual database for it. This is, obviously it's doable. But with AI tools, genuinely, that is one of the things that, like pattern recognition, some of them do well. Now, my experiences with most of the AI software we've covered, mostly on GN, is just how stupid it is. But also, I mean, you could see where vibe coding or not, like that's a useful mechanism for these disparate breach databases, and that's a concern because it's going to make this stuff easier, and it sets the barrier to entry lower. I almost wonder I really genuinely wonder what experienced sort of actual breachers, attacker groups think of it. And if you're in one, we'd love to hear from you for like a video or a piece or something. We can keep it all anonymous and everything. We'll figure out the security. But I'm just curious if, like, are the incumbents who've done all this hard work of stealing information and hacking servers and things by hand, are they like, oh, the kids these days, the up-and-comers, they don't know how hard it was to get into these servers in the old days. But anyway, the point is that the cost to customers, in addition to the monthly subscription, includes also risk of data theft, cybercrime, and extortion. And I think people really underestimate how valuable something as simple as chat logs with friends can be, even if it's just crawling through them for maybe, I don't know, like security question answers. Maybe you talk about where you were born or grew up or something with one of your good friends on Discord. That kind of information can be scraped and harvested. And once again, with pattern recognition tools being able to just crawl through this stuff, it's going to be a lot easier to find that kind of thing and strip it out of a conversation to then shove it into a database of information on a person somewhere. So gaming services in particular, there's a lot of chat going on, there's messaging, you may be logging into additional services depending on how the streaming service works, and all of that's valuable. So as far as what you can do, we can only speak for ourselves here, but just some things that I like to do. First of all, these days, password management tools are, I think, key. I'm not going to say which ones I like to use just for security reasons. I will say that I use offline-only solutions, and password managers, really the big thing with them is to just generate a new password for every single service you use. So if the password's breached, at least it's like worst case scenario, they hopefully only gain access to that service, and you've got kind of a limited scope of the damage. And then I also like to have a few passwords that are literally only in my head and memorized. Very complicated and long. You can build them a number of different ways. I'm not going to get into with it. I'd have to think how to get into it without revealing my own strategies. But point being, there's a couple like master password type situations that I like to keep strictly memorized. And then everything else, it's just randomly generated through a complex generator and managed. So if it's breached, then kind of whatever. Another thing you can do is freeze your credit. I'm not sure exactly what maybe downsides or bad sides that has. I guess it might make it a little bit harder to pull credit when you need it. You have to unfreeze it. But with the, I think it was an Equifax breach where it was like 148 million people breached with social security numbers and everything else. It's just gotten too easy to take out a credit card or get a loan in someone's name and pose as them. I know of people who have had identity theft situations where depending on how the money's being taken out, it's kind of hard to get it back. So it really just depends how they get it. But anyway, that's another option as well. So there's like stuff you can do, but ultimately every service you're going through is an attack vector. And so it's just about like limiting that damage as much as possible. In a recent video, I talked about, actually was on this channel, the New York ID law video for the internet. I talked about how personally, my opinion is I think you should lie about your date of birth on services where it's just not necessary, because it's just one more thing. Same for address, all that information. If they don't need it for whatever it is they're providing you, I personally, I would just lie about it, like the birthday thing, because it's just like Steam doesn't need to know the exact date, right? They don't even need to know the year. They just need to know like January 1st, 1901 or something. So anyway, those are some of the few things you can do. But ultimately, no company or individual cares more about your private data than you, other than the guy trying to get it to profit off of it. But it's kind of just the two of you. So we'll keep an eye on that NVIDIA thing. I suspect this is kind of case closed on their end, but it is interesting that GeForce Now has third-party services to propagate it. That I wasn't aware of before all this. So that's maybe useful for additional content in the future. But that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net or patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly, and we'll see you all next time.